No police, please, I'll be good. She said it through a mouthful of stolen beef jerky, barefoot on frozen asphalt, 32 pounds of bones wrapped in a torn nightgown. 6 years old, hands shaking, eyes that belonged to a war survivor, not a child. The man standing over her had killed enemies in Afghanistan, buried his own daughter, and spent a decade riding with the Hells Angels. Nothing had ever broken him, but those 5 words dropped him to one knee. What he didn't know yet, what nobody knew, was that this starving girl had just lit the fuse on the largest child trafficking takedown in American history. And behind her, 19 more children were waiting in the dark. If this story moves you, subscribe to this channel and stay with me until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story reaches. Cole Hayden heard the crinkle before he saw the child. He was standing outside Hudson's gas station on Route 9 in Pine Hollow, Montana, lighting a cigarette with hands that hadn't stopped shaking since Afghanistan. 43 years old, brown hair going gray too early, former Army Ranger, current Sergeant-at-Arms of the Hells Angels Stonewall chapter. The kind of man mothers pulled their children away from in grocery store aisles. The kind of man who hadn't held a child since he buried his own daughter 8 years ago. The crinkle came again, cheap plastic, loud in the silence, coming from behind the ice machine. Cole didn't rush. He walked the way he'd been trained, measured steps, hands visible, breathing controlled. He rounded the corner and stopped. A girl, barefoot, toes blackened from cold and filth, a torn nightgown that might have been white once. Blonde hair matted so thick it looked like rope. She was small, not just young small, wrong small. The kind of small that happens when a body stops growing because it stopped being fed. She was cramming stolen beef jerky into her mouth so fast she was choking on it. Their eyes met. Hers were blue, enormous, and old. Not 6-year-old old, ancient old. The kind of old that gets carved into a child's face by years of being hit by someone they can't escape. She stopped chewing. No police, please, I'll be good. Cole felt something crack inside his ribs. Not break, crack. The way a dam cracks before the whole thing gives. I'll go back, she said, still swallowing, still trying to get food into her body before someone took it away. Please don't call them, please. Cole lowered himself to one knee, slowly, the way you approach a wounded animal. I'm not calling anyone. Are you going to hit me? No. Everybody says that. Cole closed his eyes. 1 second. Opened them. My name's Cole. People call me Hawk. I'm not going to hit you. I just want to know if you're hungry. She stared at him. The beef jerky hung from her fingers, half eaten. Why? Why what? Why do you care? 6 years old, already asking what kindness costs. Because in her world, it always costs something. Because you're a kid standing barefoot in the cold eating stolen beef jerky, Cole said. And that's not okay. Something moved behind her eyes. Not trust. Nowhere near trust. Just a flicker. The faintest crack in a wall that should never have existed in a child. Emma, she whispered. My name's Emma. Cole brought her inside. He bought her 3 hot dogs, a bag of chips, a chocolate milk, and a sleeve of powdered donuts. Emma ate like the food was going to disappear. She crammed a hot dog into her mouth so fast she gagged, swallowed, gagged again. Slow down, Cole said. It's not going anywhere. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. I bought it. It's yours. Emma paused, a chip halfway to her mouth. Confusion crossed her face like she'd been handed a math problem in a language she didn't speak. Then she threw up. All of it. Right there on the gas station floor. Her stomach had shrunk so much from starvation that it rejected real food. She started crying. Not loud. She'd been trained not to cry loud. Silent, heaving sobs that shook her whole body like a seizure. I'm sorry. Please don't be mad. I'll clean it up. Emma, stop. She froze, every muscle locked, waiting for the hit. "It's okay," Cole said. His voice was steady, his hands were not. "We'll get more. We'll go slower this time." He bought more food. She ate half a hot dog in tiny bites, sipping chocolate milk between each one. The cashier behind the counter watched without a word. His eyes were wet. "How long since you've eaten?" Cole asked. "What day is it?" That question hit Cole like a fist to the jaw. She didn't know what day it was. "Saturday." "Then Monday, I think." "Mister, women gave us rice on Monday, half a cup each." "Us." The word hung in the air. Emma's eyes went wide. She knew she'd said too much. "Nobody, just me." "Emma, how many kids are at Mr. Warren's house?" Silence. She picked at the hot dog bun, tearing it into tiny pieces. Her fingers wouldn't stop moving. Nervous, calculating. 19, she whispered. "But Ben makes 20, except Ben's in the quiet place, so I don't know if he counts." "The quiet place?" "The basement, where you go when you're bad." Cole's blood went cold. Not figuratively, he felt the temperature drop through his whole body. "What happens in the quiet place?" "Nothing. That's why it's quiet. No food, no water, no light. Just dark. And you stay there until Mr. Warren says you learned your lesson." "How long?" "Depends. One day if you were a little bad, 2 days if you were medium bad, 3 days if—" Her voice dropped so low Cole had to lean forward. "3 days if you talk to an adult about home stuff. Has he put you down there?" Emma nodded. Her hands shook so badly the bun pieces fell to the table. 11 times. "What was the longest?" 3 days. Because I told my teacher I was hungry. My teacher called Mr. Warren. He said I was lying for attention." Emma's voice went flat, rehearsed, like she'd replayed it so many times it had lost all color. "That night he carried me downstairs and said I needed to think about what happens to girls who make up stories." Cole's fists curled under the table. He forced them open, forced his face to stay calm. Because this child was reading every micro-expression on his face the way a soldier reads terrain, looking for threats. "You said Ben is down there now?" Emma's lip trembled. 5 days. He's been down there 5 days. "How old is Ben?" 4. The room tilted. Cole's mind did the math before he could stop it. A 4-year-old could survive roughly 72 hours without water under good conditions. 5 days was 120 hours, far past the limit. "Is Ben okay?" Emma's face collapsed. Not all at once, in pieces, like a building coming apart floor by floor. "I don't know. I go to the basement door every night when Mr. Warren is sleeping. I put my ear against it and listen. Ben used to cry, then he used to tap on the wall. Then he used to hum this song his mommy taught him before she went away." "When did he stop?" "Yesterday." Her voice cracked straight down the middle. "Yesterday I listened and there was nothing. No crying, no tapping, no humming. Just quiet." Cole stood up. The chair scraped across the floor. Emma recoiled like he'd raised a hand. "I'm not mad at you," he said quickly. "I need to make a phone call. Can you sit here for 1 minute? I'll be right by that door. You can see me the whole time." "You're going to call the police?" "No." "You're going to call Mr. Warren?" "I would rather die." Something in his voice, the rawness, the absolute certainty, cut through every wall she had. She believed him. She nodded. Cole walked to the door. He pulled out his phone and called the one person on earth he trusted with something like this. 1 ring, 2 rings, then a voice like gravel being crushed. "Hawk, you're supposed to be at the memorial ride. What's going on?" "Preacher, I need everyone. Everyone you can get within 300 miles. Tonight." Silence. Hank Preacher Sullivan, 62 years old, president of the Stonewall chapter, had run this club for 15 years. He'd taken a lot of calls, but something in Cole's voice made him set down his coffee and stand up from his chair. "Talk to me." Cole told him. All of it. The girl, 32 pounds. The bruises, 19 children. The basement, the 4-year-old boy who hadn't made a sound in 24 hours. 4 seconds of silence. The longest 4 seconds of Cole's life. Where are you? Hudson's gas station. Route 9, Pine Hollow. Stay there, don't move. Don't call anyone else. I'm mobilizing Wyoming and Idaho. We'll have 140 brothers there by 1 a.m. Preacher's voice hardened. Can you keep that girl safe until then? Cole looked through the glass door. Emma was sitting exactly where he'd left her. Not eating, not moving, just watching him with those ancient eyes. Testing, waiting to see if this adult would keep his word or shatter it like every adult before him. Yeah, Cole said, I can keep her safe. Then that's your only job right now. We're coming. The line went dead. Cole walked back inside. Emma was clutching the chocolate milk with both hands like it was the last solid thing in a world made of smoke. Who did you call? Family. You have family? 143 brothers, and they're all about to make Mr. Warren very, very sorry. Emma stared at him, not with hope, with the careful skepticism of a child who had been disappointed so many times she'd stopped counting. Nobody's ever been sorry about Mr. Warren. He's important. He goes to church. The mayor likes him. The police chief's wife brings him casseroles. He's never met people like us. What kind of people are you? Cole looked at her. The kind that don't walk away. Emma held his gaze for a long time. Then she said something that knocked the air out of his lungs. There's more. More what? More kids. Not at Mr. Warren's, other places. Cole went still, completely still. Mr. Warren has meetings once a month. Other grown-ups come. They sit in his kitchen and talk about us. Emma's voice dropped. They call us inventory. Inventory? I don't know what it means, but they count us. And sometimes they say a kid is ready to be relocated, and then that kid disappears. Disappears how? Just gone. One morning their bed is empty. Mr. Warren says they went to a better home. But, she leaned forward, Lucas was relocated 6 months ago. He was my friend. He was 8. And before he left, he told me he heard Mr. Warren on the phone saying that Lucas was worth $45,000 easy. Cole felt the ground open beneath him. $45,000. These weren't foster care transfers. These were sales. Children were being sold. How many kids have been relocated? Since I came, 3. But the older kids say it's been happening for years. They say Mr. Warren has a list. And when your name gets on the list, you're gone within a week. Cole's throat tightened. He forced the next question out. Is your name on the list? Emma's entire body went rigid. Every muscle, every tendon. Her eyes filled with something that wasn't fear anymore. It was resignation. The look of a child who had accepted something no child should ever have to accept. Mr. Warren said last week that I was almost ready. He said I was almost old enough. Her voice was barely a breath. He said there was a man who wanted someone like me. Cole's vision went white. Pure, blinding white. His daughter's face flashed through his mind. Blonde hair, blue eyes, 9 years old forever, gone before the morning light. He breathed. Once, twice, dragged himself back from the edge. That's not going to happen, he said. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Do you hear me, Emma? That is never going to happen. You can't stop him. Nobody can stop him. He knows people, important people. He doesn't know me. You're just one person. I'm not one person. I'm 143 people. And by tomorrow morning, Mr. Warren's house is going to be empty. His files are going to be in the hands of the FBI, and he's going to be in handcuffs. Cole leaned forward. I promise you that. Emma looked at him, long and hard and searching. My mom used to promise things too. Before she died, she promised I'd always be safe. She promised no one would ever hurt me. Her voice was flat, empty. A 6-year-old speaking in the voice of someone who'd already lived too long. She was wrong. People are always wrong when they promise things to kids like me. I'm not your mom, and I'm not wrong. How do I know that? Cole reached into his jacket. His fingers found the silver chain. He pulled it out. A St. Michael medal. Small, worn smooth from years of being held. This was my daughter's. Her name was Nora. She died 8 years ago. A drunk driver. Cole's voice caught. He let it catch. I've worn this every single day since, never taken it off. It's the most important thing I own. He pressed it into Emma's palm. Hold this for me. I'll need it back. So yeah, I'm coming back. I don't break promises. Not about this. Not ever. Emma stared at the medal in her hand. Her lip trembled. Her eyes filled. And for the first time since Cole had found her choking on stolen beef jerky behind an ice machine, something changed in her face. She didn't look like a trapped animal anymore. She looked like a child hoping. Okay, she whispered. Her fingers closed tight around the medal. Okay. At 12:47 a.m., the first headlights hit the gas station parking lot. Then more. Then more. Then the sound. A rumble that started low and grew until it shook the windows. Engines, dozens of them, rolling into Pine Hollow like thunder that wouldn't stop. 27 bikes from Wyoming came first, then 18 from Idaho, then Montana brothers arriving in packs of 5, 10, 15. Men in leather vests stepped off their motorcycles and walked toward Cole in silence. Faces hard, eyes harder. Fathers, grandfathers, uncles. Men who had left warm beds, walked out of overnight shifts, hung up on their wives mid-sentence, because somewhere in the Montana dark, children were starving, a boy was dying, and a man the county called a hero was sleeping in a king-size bed with a belly full of steak. Griff Morrison reached Cole first. 6'4", 290, former Marine. A man who said more with silence than most men said in a lifetime. He looked through the gas station window at Emma. Small, wrapped in a blanket, clutching something silver in her fist. How old? 6. Weight? 32 pounds. Griff closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. This man who had cleared buildings in Fallujah without blinking, his eyes were wet. And the boy in the basement? 4 years old, 5 days, no water. Then we move now. We wait for Preacher. If Warren has connections to other homes, other operators, we have to hit them all at once, or they scatter. And if that boy dies while we wait? Cole didn't answer, because the truth was a knife with no handle. Every minute they planned was a minute Ben might not have. And every minute they rushed was a minute a network of predators could use to destroy evidence, move children, and vanish like smoke. Preacher rolled in at 1:14 a.m., white beard, reading glasses, flannel shirt under his leather vest. He looked like someone's grandfather picking up cough drops at a drugstore, but his eyes were iron, the kind that doesn't bend, the kind that gets forged in a fire most people don't survive. He walked past every brother in that parking lot without stopping, went straight to the gas station window, looked at Emma. She looked back. 10 seconds. Neither of them blinked. Then Preacher turned to Cole. She reminds me of Ella. Ella, Preacher's daughter, failed by the foster system at 8 years old, dead from neglect in state care, while a caseworker filed paperwork certifying the home was safe. I know, Cole said. That's why I started this club. That's why every one of these men is standing in this parking lot right now. Preacher's voice was quiet, but every man heard it. 14 years ago, I buried my daughter because the system that was supposed to protect her protected itself instead. I swore on her grave I would never let that happen to another child. He turned to face them. 143 men standing in the frozen Montana dark. There's a 4-year-old boy in a basement less than 8 miles from where we're standing. He may already be dead. If he's not, he will be by morning. Preacher's jaw tightened. We are not waiting until morning. He looked at Cole. Hawk, you and Griff take 12 men. Get to that house. Get that boy out alive. Document everything you find. We coordinate with the FBI for the full operation, but that child cannot survive another hour. Cole nodded. The girl stays with me. When this is over, every child in that house will be safe. And Donald Warren is going to learn what happens when a monster meets something worse than himself. Cole walked back inside the gas station. Emma was watching through the window, her eyes wide at the rows of motorcycles stretching across the lot. Are those your brothers? Yeah. All of them? All of them. And they're here for you, for Ben, for every kid in that house. Emma looked at the men in leather, then she looked back at Cole. Mr. Warren says nobody cares about kids like us. He says we're invisible. He says we could disappear and nobody would even notice. Cole crouched down until they were eye to eye. Mr. Warren is a liar. And tonight, 143 people are going to prove it. Emma pressed the St. Michael medal against her chest. Bring Ben back, she whispered. He's scared of the dark. He's so scared of the dark, and he's been down there so long. Her voice broke. Please bring him back. I will. Promise? Promise. Cole walked out. He kicked his engine to life. Griff pulled up beside him. 12 brothers fell into formation behind them. 14 headlights cutting through the Montana night like blades. The last thing Cole heard as he pulled out of that parking lot was Emma's voice. Small, fierce, carrying through the gas station door like a bell ringing in the dark. He promised. She was talking to Preacher, making sure someone else knew, because in Emma's world, promises were the only currency that mattered, and she had just handed hers to a stranger on a motorcycle who said he'd come back. And somewhere in the Montana night, in a basement that hadn't seen light in 5 days, a 4-year-old boy named Ben was running out of time. 14 engines died a quarter-mile from the house. Cole raised a fist and every bike went silent, coasting on momentum, tires crunching gravel, soft as whispers. They dismounted in the dark, no words, hand signals only. 12 men who knew how to move without being heard, because half of them had done it in places where sound got you killed. Cole reached the front porch first. Griff was 2 steps behind. The house was quiet, not sleeping quiet, held down quiet, suffocated quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and tells you something inside has been suffering for a long, long time. Cole tried the handle, locked. He stepped aside. Griff stepped forward. One kick. The door frame splintered like balsa wood and swung inward, and the smell hit them like walking into a wall. Urine, mold, something rotten underneath it all. And beneath that, something worse. A sharp, metallic tang that Cole recognized from combat zones. Fear. Years of it, soaked into the floors, the walls, the air itself. This house smelled like a place where children had been afraid for so long, the fear had become part of the structure. Basement, Cole said. Now. He moved fast, down a hallway, past a kitchen, and then he saw it, the door. Heavy, metal reinforced. 3 locks on the outside, 3 deadbolts installed, not to keep intruders out, but to keep children in. Cole's hands shook as he worked the bolts. 1, 2, 3. The door swung open, and darkness poured out like breath from something that had been starving in the earth. Ben! His voice went down the stairs and came back empty. Ben, my name is Cole. I'm here to help you. Emma sent me. Nothing. Ben, can you hear me? Nothing. Cole went down. Each step groaned under his weight. The air got thicker, wetter, colder. His flashlight cut through the black and found concrete walls, a drain in the center of the floor. No bed, no blanket, no toilet, no light source, nothing. Just a concrete box built to hold a child in total darkness until the child stopped being a child and became something broken. And in the far corner, something so small it barely looked human. Ben was curled tight, fetal position, eyes closed, skin gray. His lips were cracked so badly they were bleeding. He was breathing, but barely, shallow, irregular. The kind of breathing that happens when a body starts shutting down one organ at a time. 4 years old, 22 pounds on a frame that should have carried 35. Cole dropped to his knees. Ben, hey buddy, can you open your eyes for me? Nothing. Then the faintest movement, fingers twitching against the concrete. A sound that wasn't a word and wasn't a cry. Something between a whimper and a last breath. The sound a body makes when it's almost done trying. He's alive, Cole called up the stairs. Barely. Get the medic down here now. Russ Navarro came down those stairs in 3 seconds flat. Former Navy corpsman, hands that had kept Marines alive in Helmand Province. He took one look at Ben, and his face drained of color. Severe dehydration, hypothermia, pulse is thready. Russ was already pulling supplies from his kit. I need an IV line and I need it 30 seconds ago. Someone call an ambulance. This kid has maybe 2 hours. 2 hours? His kidneys are failing, Cole. I can stabilize, but he needs a hospital. He needed one 3 days ago. Griff was already on the phone. Cole watched Russ work, hands moving fast but gentle, talking to Ben in a low, steady voice, even though the boy couldn't hear him. Hey, little man, you're okay now. We got you. You're coming out of here. No more dark, you hear me? No more dark. Ben's eyes opened, just barely, slits of brown in a gray face. He looked at Russ and flinched. A 4-year-old boy, barely conscious, organs failing, and his first reflex when he saw a grown man's face was to flinch. Easy, Russ whispered. I'm not him. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm the guy who's going to make you feel better. Ben's cracked lips moved. No sound. Then again, barely there. Dark. I know, buddy. Dark hurt. Russ's hands kept working, setting the IV, wrapping the tiny body in a thermal blanket. But tears rolled down his face and he didn't wipe them. Didn't try to. Didn't care who saw. Cole left them. He had work to do and a man to find, and a rage inside him that he was holding on a leash made of spider silk. He found Donald Warren in the master bedroom. King-size bed, thick comforter, 2 pillows, a half-eaten steak dinner on the nightstand, a glass of red wine, a television on the wall, a mini fridge humming in the corner. Upstairs, comfort, luxury, a full belly. Downstairs, a 4-year-old dying on bare concrete in the dark. Warren woke when Cole's flashlight hit his face. He sat up squinting, already reaching for his phone on the nightstand. What the? Who are you? How did you get in my house? Cole took the phone from his hand, calmly, the way you take a crayon from a toddler. You're not calling anyone. This is breaking and entering. I have rights. I'm a licensed foster care provider. The state of Montana gave you 20 children. You starved 19 of them and locked a 4-year-old in your basement for 5 days. Cole's voice was flat, controlled, terrifying in its calm. He's dying right now, Donald, in your basement, while you were up here sleeping off a steak dinner. Warren's face shifted. Not fear, not shame. Calculation. The same look Cole had seen on men figuring out which lie would keep them alive. That child has severe behavioral issues. He was placed in a therapeutic. Don't. I have documentation. His caseworker approved the intervention. I said don't. You have no authority here. You're trespassing. Whatever that girl told you, she's a liar. All of them lie. Foster children are manipulative by nature. It's well documented that her name is Emma. She's 6. She weighs 32 pounds. She hasn't eaten since Monday. Cole took one step closer. She told me you lock them in the basement when they cry. She told me you haven't fed them in 5 days. And she told me you sell them. For the first time, something broke through Warren's mask. A flash of genuine fear. Quick as lightning, gone just as fast. That's absurd. $45,000, that's what you said Lucas was worth. An 8-year-old boy. You said it on the phone, and Emma heard every word. Warren went pale. Not embarrassed pale, dead pale. The color of a man watching his entire, carefully constructed life begin to collapse. Who told you that? Does it matter? That little... Warren caught himself, his jaw locked. She was listening? She heard that? Yeah, Donald, she heard it. Kids hear everything, especially kids who've learned that hearing things might be the only way to stay alive. Warren's eyes darted around the room, not looking at Cole, looking for exits, looking for options, his brain running through every play he had left. I want my lawyer. You'll get one after the FBI gets here, after they go through every file cabinet in this house, after they talk to every child you've been starving, beating, and selling like livestock. You don't understand. Warren's voice changed, dropped, became something almost conspiratorial. You don't understand what you're walking into. I provide a service. Ask anyone. Ask the mayor. Ask Pastor Owens. Ask... His mouth snapped shut. Too late. Who's Pastor Owens, Donald? Warren's face went blank. The kind of blank that takes effort. The kind of blank that tells you the name that just slipped out was the most important thing said in this room. I want my lawyer. Cole turned to Griff. Watch him. Don't let him near a phone. And if he talks, let him talk. Everything he says is going on record. Griff looked down at Warren. 290 pounds of former Marine, looking at a man who starved children and slept in a king-size bed. Warren shrank back against his headboard. Please, Warren said, you don't know what happens if this comes out. You don't know who's involved. That's exactly what we're about to find out. Cole walked out of the bedroom and started opening doors. The first room had 6 children in it. 6 kids on bare mattresses on the floor. No sheets, no pillows, wearing clothes so thin Cole could count their ribs through the fabric. Every one of them was awake, wide eyes catching his flashlight like small moons in the dark. And not one of them made a sound. Not a scream, not a cry, not a whisper. They stared with the frozen stillness of children who had learned that noise means pain and movement means punishment. My name is Cole, he said softly. I'm here to help. Mister, Warren is not in charge anymore. A boy in the back of the room sat up slowly. Maybe 10 years old, thin as wire, eyes that held the same ancient look Emma carried. He says that too. The boy's voice was flat, practiced. When the inspectors come, he tells us to say we're happy. He dresses us in clean clothes and puts food on the table and smiles real big. Then the inspectors leave, and he takes the food away and carries us to the basement, one by one. I'm not an inspector. Then who are you? I'm the guy who's going to make sure nobody puts you in a basement ever again. The boy studied him, hard, suspicious, reading Cole the way Emma had read him, looking for the lie, waiting for the trap. You're wearing a leather vest. You're a biker. Yeah. Mr. Warren says bikers are criminals. Mr. Warren says a lot of things that aren't true. The boy considered this. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not trust, but the absence of automatic disbelief. My name's Caleb. Lucas was my friend. He got relocated 6 months ago. Mr. Warren said he went to a better home. But Lucas told me the night before that he was scared. He said he heard Mr. Warren talking about money. He begged me to help him. Caleb's voice cracked. I couldn't help him. I was too scared. I hid under my mattress and I listened to them take Lucas out of the house at 3 in the morning. He was crying. He kept saying my name. And I just laid there. That's not your fault. Then whose fault is it? Caleb's eyes burned. Because somebody should have done something. Somebody should have listened. That inspector came 8 months ago. He saw the bruises on Megan's arms. He asked questions. He wrote things on a clipboard. And then Mr. Warren walked him to his car and handed him an envelope. A thick envelope. And that night, Caleb stopped, swallowed. That night was the worst beating we ever had. Warren said that's what happens when kids show bruises to strangers. Who was the inspector? I don't know his name. He had a badge, a nice car, and he smiled. Even when he was looking right at our bruises, he kept smiling. Cole filed it. Badge, nice car, smiling at bruises. A man paid to look the other way. Another piece of a machine that was starting to look much bigger than one house. He moved through the house, room after room. Same bare mattresses, same starving children, same terrified silence. A girl, maybe 7, was holding a younger boy in the dark, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay," over and over. Not because it was true, but because it was the only thing she had to give. "Where's Ben?" the girl asked. "We found him. He's being taken care of." "Is he dead?" The question came out flat, matter of fact, the way you'd ask if it was raining. "No, he's alive." Megan said he'd be dead by now. She said nobody survives the quiet place 5 days. "Ben's alive, and he's staying alive." The girl exhaled, a long, shaking breath, like she'd been holding it for days. Then she started crying. Not the silent, trained crying Emma had shown him. Real crying. Loud, messy, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. And then the boy she was holding started crying. And then the next room heard it, and those kids started crying. And suddenly the house was full of the sound of children weeping, and Cole stood in the middle of it and didn't stop them, didn't shush them, didn't move. Because these kids hadn't been allowed to make sound in months, maybe years. Every sob was a lock breaking open. Every cry was a door swinging wide, and Cole would stand here all night if that's what it took. His phone buzzed. "Preacher." "Hawk, ambulance is 3 minutes out. How many kids total?" 20, including Ben. "Condition?" "Starved, all of them. Beaten, most of them. Terrified, every single one." Cole's voice went thick. "They flinch when I move, preacher. They apologize for breathing too loud." Silence on the line. "And Warren?" "Griff has him. But preacher," he dropped a name before he could stop himself. "Pastor Owens. And Caleb told me about an inspector who took an envelope and walked away from bruises on a child. This isn't one man. This is a system." "I know." Preacher's voice was low. "Emma told me." "She told you?" "While you were writing. She told me about the monthly meetings, the adults in the kitchen, the word inventory, the kids who disappeared." A pause. "She trusts me, Cole. She's sleeping on my lap right now. First time she's slept in days. She's holding your metal so tight her knuckles are white." Cole's throat closed. He pressed his back against the hallway wall and looked up at the ceiling and let himself feel it. Just for a second, the weight of what was happening, the size of it. "There's something else," Preacher said. "I called Torres." "Torres?" "FBI, Special Agent Maria Torres. Only federal agent I trust on this earth." I told her what we found. Preacher paused. "She's mobilizing a team. ETA 6 hours. But she said something that changes everything." "What?" "She's had Donald Warren on a watch list for 2 years. Could never move on him. He's protected." "Protected by who?" "A family court judge named Walter Reed. He's been routing children specifically into homes connected to Warren's network. At least 6 years running, maybe longer." Cole felt the floor tilt beneath him. A judge, the person who decides where the most vulnerable children in the state end up, was hand-delivering them to their abuser. "How many homes?" Torres doesn't know the full scope, but she suspects at least a dozen, across 4 states. 4 states? "Cole, this is bigger than one house, bigger than Warren. This is a machine, and it's been running for years because the people who are supposed to stop it are the ones operating it. Then we stop it. That's exactly what we're going to do, but we do it smart, legal, documented, everything clean so these animals can't slither out on technicalities. Preacher's voice hardened. Because I promise you, Cole, the kind of people who can protect a child trafficker for 6 years through a sitting judge are the kind of people who have very expensive lawyers and very short memories. The ambulances arrived, 3 of them, lights flashing red and blue across the house like something out of a nightmare turning into a rescue. Paramedics moved through the rooms, examining children, recording weights, documenting injuries. One EMT walked out the front door, leaned against the railing, and threw up. Her partner found her there a minute later, shaking, and she said, "She weighs 29 pounds. That girl in there is 8 years old, and she weighs 29 pounds. How does nobody know about this?" Ben was carried out on a stretcher. The IV bags swayed above him. Russ Navarro walked beside him with one hand on the stretcher rail, refusing to let go. "Is he going to make it?" Cole asked. Russ didn't answer right away, and that silence was the answer. His kidneys are under extreme stress. The next 12 hours are everything. His voice cracked. "He's 4, Cole. He was down there 5 days. What kind of human being does that to a 4-year-old? The kind sitting tied to a chair in his own bedroom. Warren was led out of the house in handcuffs at 3:47 a.m. He'd gone quiet. No more demands, no more threats. He walked with his head down, his bathrobe dragging through the gravel, looking small and soft and ordinary. The kind of man you'd pass in a grocery store without a second glance. But as they loaded him into the patrol car, he lifted his head. He looked directly at Cole, and he smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a defeated smile. A cold, knowing, confident smile. A smile that said, "You think this is over? You have no idea what you've started." Cole watched the car pull away and felt ice move through his veins. Women wasn't scared. A man caught with a dying child in his basement should be terrified. Warren was calm, which meant his protection ran deeper than a judge, deeper than an inspector, deeper than anything they'd uncovered tonight. His phone rang. Griff. "Hawk, get back to Warren's office, now." "What'd you find?" "His wife, Catherine. She locked herself in the bathroom when we came through the door. She's been in there crying for an hour. But that's not why I'm calling." Griff's voice changed, went thick. The kind of thick that only happens when a hard man hits something harder than himself. "There are file cabinets in the office, organized, labeled. Each folder has a child's photograph clipped to the front. And underneath every photo, there's a name, a date, and a dollar amount." Cole stopped walking. "How many folders?" "I've counted 23 so far, and I'm not done." 23 children, photographed, priced, filed away like inventory at a warehouse by a man who went to church on Sunday and a wife who sang in the choir. "Don't touch anything else. Chain of custody. Torres needs to process all of it." "Cole," Griff's voice dropped. "There's one more thing. Most of the folders are labeled transferred, but one of them isn't. One of them is labeled reserved." "Reserved?" I opened it. There's a photograph inside. "Of who?" 3 seconds of silence. 3 seconds that stretched into eternity. Emma. The word hit Cole like a round to the chest. Emma. Her photo, in a folder marked reserved. She wasn't just a name on a list. She was already cataloged, already priced, already promised to a buyer. "How much?" $55,000. There's a handwritten note. Buyer confirmed. Transfer date, November 3rd. November 3rd, 11 days away. 11 days. If Emma hadn't stolen that beef jerky, if Cole hadn't been at that gas station, if she had stayed quiet for one more week, she would have been gone. Sold. Vanished into a machine designed to make children disappear without a trace. "We find every name," Cole said. His voice was quiet. Dangerous. "Every folder, every buyer, every dollar, and we tear this entire network out by the roots. At 4:47 a.m., the bathroom door opened. Catherine Warren came out slowly, mascara streaked down her face, hands trembling, and in her right hand, a flash drive, held so tight her knuckles were bone white. She looked at Cole with hollow eyes and said 4 words. "I want to talk." "Then talk." "Not without a deal. I want protection. For me and my daughter." "Your daughter?" "Claire. She's 14. Boarding school in Oregon. Warren doesn't know she exists. She's not his. She's from before." Catherine's voice shook. "I sent her away 3 years ago, the day I realized what he was doing. I sent her as far away as I could." "You sent your daughter to safety, and you let 20 children starve in your house." Catherine flinched like Cole had slapped her. "You think I don't know what I am? You think I sleep at night?" She held up the flash drive. "I've been keeping records for 3 years. Every transaction, every name, every dollar, every child, because I knew someone would come eventually. And when they did, I wanted enough to burn it all to the ground." "Why didn't you go to the police?" Catherine laughed, the ugliest sound Cole had ever heard come from a human throat. "The police chief's brother-in-law is one of the buyers. The county sheriff plays golf with Judge Reed every Thursday. The state attorney general received $40,000 from a PAC that the man running this network controls." She looked at Cole with eyes that had stopped hoping a long time ago. "There is no one to go to. The system isn't broken. The system is working exactly the way they designed it." "Who designed it? Who's running it? Warren?" "Warren?" Catherine almost laughed again. "Warren is a foot soldier. He thinks he's important, but he's nobody. The foster parents, the inspectors, Judge Reed, they're all just pieces on a board. Then who's moving them?" Catherine's face changed. Everything drained out of it. Color, expression, life. What was left was pure, bone-deep terror. "If I say his name, I'm dead. My daughter is dead." "You're already in danger, Catherine. The second we walked through that door, your clock started ticking." She stared at him, tears running, hands shaking, the flash drive trembling between her fingers like it was radioactive. "His name," she whispered, "is Congressman Richard Harmon." The air in the room stopped moving. Griff, standing by the door, inhaled sharply. "He chairs the House Subcommittee on Child Welfare." Catherine's voice was barely audible. "He writes the federal funding formulas. He decides how much money every state gets per foster child, and he takes a cut of every single transaction in this network. 10%. Every child sold, Harmon gets his share. A United States congressman, sitting in the halls of power, writing the laws that were supposed to protect children, and skimming profit off every child who was sold through the machine he built. He comes here twice a year," Catherine continued, "drives a rental car, pays cash, sits at that kitchen table and looks at photographs of children and points at the ones he wants reserved for specific buyers." "Who are the buyers?" "His donors, his campaign contributors, his friends." Catherine's voice cracked wide open. "These aren't strangers on the dark web, Cole. These are businessmen, lawyers, a retired general, people with money and power and connections that make problems disappear overnight." "The flash drive, does it connect Harmon directly?" "Wire transfers from shell companies he controls. Encrypted messages I screenshotted before Warren could delete them. And photographs." Catherine swallowed. "Photographs of Harmon in this house, standing next to children who were sold within weeks of his visits." Cole took the flash drive from her hand. It weighed almost nothing, a few grams of plastic and metal. And inside it, enough evidence to bring down a United States congressman, a federal judge, and a child trafficking network that spans 6 states. He looked at Catherine, this woman who had watched children starve in her own home for 3 years, while secretly building a bomb to destroy the empire that trapped her. "Torres is on her way," he said. "FBI. You tell her everything, every name, every date, every dollar. You hold nothing back. And my daughter? If what's on this drive is what you say it is, your daughter will be the most protected 14-year-old in America. Catherine closed her eyes, nodded, and for the first time she stopped shaking. Outside, the Montana sky was turning gray at the edges. Dawn coming. The ambulances were gone. The children were gone, headed to hospitals, to emergency shelters, to anywhere that wasn't this house. The brothers stood in the yard, quiet, smoking, staring at the ground. Men who had seen violence and delivered violence and lived in a world that ran on violence. Standing in a gravel driveway at 5 a.m, trying to process what had been done to children behind a door with 3 locks. Cole's phone rang. Preacher. How's Emma? Still sleeping, still holding that medal. A pause. What did Catherine give you? Everything. Names, money trails, communications, and a name at the top, the person running the whole network. Who? Cole looked at the flash drive in his hand, thought about what he was about to say, about how it would change everything, about the size of what they were walking into. Congressman Richard Harmon, chairman of the House Subcommittee on Child Welfare. Preacher was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried something Cole had never heard from him before. Not anger, not surprise, recognition. Like a man who had always suspected the fire went all the way to the top and now had proof. Then we burn it all down, Preacher said. Every floor, every name, every connection. We burn it down and we don't stop until there's nothing left standing. The sun broke over the mountains, and somewhere in a hospital room 40 miles away, a 4-year-old boy named Ben opened his eyes, saw a light on the ceiling, and whispered one word to the stranger holding his hand. Bright. Special Agent Maria Torres arrived at the Pine Hollow Fire Station at 6:22 a.m. with 12 federal agents, 4 forensic accountants, and a look on her face that said she hadn't slept and didn't plan to. She was 48 years old, compact, dark-haired, and carried herself like someone who had spent 2 decades swimming upstream through a system designed to drown people like her. She'd built her career on cases nobody else wanted to touch. The ones with powerful names attached. The ones where evidence disappeared from locked rooms and witnesses changed their stories overnight. She took the flash drive from Cole's hand, held it up to the light like a jeweler examining a diamond, and said one word. Harmon. Catherine Warren gave it up, Cole said. Wire transfers, communications, photographs. She says it connects him directly to the network. Torres looked at him, hard, measuring. Do you know what Congressman Richard Harmon controls? Catherine told me. Subcommittee on Child Welfare, federal funding formulas. That's the public version. Torres lowered her voice. The private version is that Harmon controls the budget for my unit. He decides how much money the FBI gets to investigate crimes against children. He has blocked every funding increase I've requested for 4 years. He killed a task force I tried to build in 2022. He personally called my director and said I was wasting federal resources on, and I quote, exaggerated claims from unstable foster youth. He shut you down. He buried me. I've had Warren on my radar for 2 years. Every time I got close, something happened. Witnesses recanted. Evidence went missing. A local judge issued a gag order. I couldn't prove it was Harmon pulling the strings, but I knew. I could feel it. Torres held up the flash drive. If what's on here is what Catherine says it is, this is the biggest child trafficking prosecution in American history. And the man at the top of it sits in the United States Congress. Then let's move. It's not that simple. Torres pulled Cole aside. The moment we touch Harmon, his lawyers will file every motion in the book. They'll challenge the evidence. They'll call the Hells Angels a criminal organization that manufactured a conspiracy. They'll put traumatized children on a stand and try to prove they're lying. And they'll have judges on their side. Judges Harmon appointed, judges Harmon funded, judges who owe him everything. So what do? We hit every location at the same time. Every house, every operator, every connection. We collect every piece of evidence before anyone can destroy it. We secure every child before anyone can move them. And we do it in the next 6 hours because once the sun comes up and Warren's lawyer makes a phone call, this network starts eating itself. Files burned, children relocated, operators scattered. I've got 378 brothers standing by across 4 states, Cole said. Tell me where to send them. Torres stared at him. For 3 seconds, she weighed everything. Protocol, career, the law, the lives of children she'd been trying to save for 2 years while a congressman tied her hands behind her back. 14 locations, she said. 4 states, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Oregon. I'll assign FBI teams to each one. Your people secure the children. My people secure the evidence. Nobody freelances. Nobody goes cowboy. Everything documented. Everything clean. Because if we give Harmon's lawyers one crack, one procedural error, one questionable search, this whole thing collapses and those children end up back in the dark. Understood. Torres turned to her team. Full deployment. All 14 targets. Simultaneous entry. 0 leaks. If anyone's phone rings with a number they don't recognize, they don't answer. If anyone gets a call from Washington, they route it to me. Nobody talks to press. Nobody talks to local law enforcement. Nobody talks to anyone outside this room until every child is secured. Why not local law enforcement? One of her agents asked. Torres looked at him. Because 3 of the 14 operators on our list are married to local law enforcement. The room went quiet. By 6:45 a.m., the operation was in motion. 378 Hells Angels and 47 federal agents coordinated across 4 states, connected by encrypted channels, moving toward 14 houses where children were being held, starved, beaten, and sold. Cole drew the hardest target, Twin Falls, Idaho, Pastor Gerald Owens. The name Warren had let slip. The man Catherine described as Harmon's most trusted operator, the one who ran a church as a front, who used Sunday sermons to recruit foster families into the network, who had personally facilitated the sale of at least 11 children over 5 years. And the most dangerous detail, Torres believed Owens had already been warned. Someone in the network had made a call. Owens knew they were coming. Cole rode with Griff and 10 brothers. They covered the 200 miles to Twin Falls in under 3 hours, pushing their bikes hard through empty highways with the sun rising behind them. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Every man on that road had seen Emma's photograph in Warren's filing cabinet. Every man had heard Caleb describe watching his friend Lucas get carried out of the house at 3 in the morning. Every man had stood in that hallway and listened to children cry for the first time in months. They arrived at Owens's church at 9:38 a.m., and everything went wrong immediately. Griff's phone rang. Torres. Owens isn't at his house. His wife says he left 2 hours ago, took 6 children from the foster home, and drove to the church. He's barricaded inside. Armed? His wife says he owns a shotgun, and she says, Torres hesitated, she says he told her he'd rather die than go to prison, and he's not going alone. Cole's blood went cold. He has 6 kids in there? 6 confirmed, ages 4 to 11. Has anyone made contact? Local police set up a perimeter 20 minutes ago. They're treating it as a hostage situation. But Cole, the local police chief in Twin Falls, is Gerald Owens's brother. You're telling me the man running the perimeter is the barricaded suspect's brother? I'm telling you, this is exactly why we can't trust local law enforcement. I have a tactical team 90 minutes out. Can you hold the situation until then? Cole looked at the church. A white building with a steeple. Stained glass windows catching the morning sun. 6 children trapped inside with a desperate man and a shotgun. 90 minutes is too long. Cole. There are 6 kids in there with a man who just told his wife he'd rather die than surrender. Every minute we wait is a minute he gets more desperate. I'm going to talk to him. You're not a trained negotiator. No, I'm the guy who found a 6-year-old eating stolen beef jerky at a gas station. And right now, that's more qualification than anyone with a badge has shown these kids in years. Torres was quiet for 5 seconds. Don't get those children killed. That's the only thing I'm here to prevent. Cole walked toward the church alone, hands visible, no weapon. Every brother behind him wanted to follow, and every one of them stayed put because Cole signaled them to hold. This wasn't about force. A man holding a shotgun in a room full of children doesn't respond to force. He responds to truth, or he responds to nothing. Cole reached the front door, locked. He knocked 3 times, calm, like he was arriving for Sunday service. Go away, the voice came from inside, tight, wound up. The voice of a man standing on the edge of something he couldn't come back from. Pastor Owens, my name is Cole. I'm not FBI. I'm not police. I know who you are. You're the one who took Warren. I found a little girl at a gas station last night because she was hungry enough to steal a bag of beef jerky. That's all I did. You're destroying God's work. Cole pressed his forehead against the door, breathed, let the anger pass through him without grabbing hold of it. I found a 4-year-old boy dying in Warren's basement. He'd been in the dark for 5 days. No food, no water. His kidneys were shutting down. Cole paused. Is that God's work, Pastor? Silence. Long, heavy silence. Warren was careless, Owens finally said. I told him the boy was too young for the quiet room. I told him 3 days maximum. But Warren doesn't listen. Warren thinks he's untouchable. So you knew about the basement. I knew about everything. I built it, all of it. Before Harmon, before Reed, before any of them. I was the one who saw the opportunity. The foster system is broken. Nobody watches. Nobody checks. Children come in and nobody counts whether they come out. Cole's jaw tightened. This man wasn't confessing out of guilt. He was bragging. Standing in a church with 6 terrified children and a shotgun, and he was bragging about building a machine that sold kids. Those 6 children in there with you, Cole said. What's your plan? My plan is that nobody takes them. They're mine. I raised them. I fed them. You sold 11 others just like them. The silence that followed was different, cracked, like ice giving way. That's not... Owens's voice wavered. They went to good homes, families who wanted them, families who could provide $45,000 per child. That's not adoption, Pastor. That's commerce. You put price tags on children and ship them to the highest bidder. You don't understand the system. These children had no future, no parents, no one who wanted them. I gave them value. I gave them purpose. You gave them to strangers for money. I gave them families. Then why did a 12-year-old girl come back from one of your families covered in bruises? Dead silence. The kind of silence that doesn't breathe. Cole pressed harder. There was a girl. Catherine Warren's records have it documented. You placed her with a family in Boise. She was 12. She came back 4 months later with bruises on her thighs, her back, her neck. And you know what you did, Pastor? You sent her back. You sent her right back to that family because they'd already paid, and you don't do refunds. Stop. What was her name? Stop it. Her name was Sarah. She was 12 years old, and you knew exactly what was happening to her in that house. You knew, and you sent her back. A sound came through the door. Not words. Something raw. Something breaking. The sound of a man confronting the thing he'd buried so deep he'd convinced himself it didn't exist. God, forgive me. God's not the one standing outside your door right now, Cole said. I am. And there are 6 children behind you who are breathing the same air as a man holding a shotgun. You want forgiveness? You want to be something other than what you've become? Then put the gun down, open this door, and let those kids walk out. If I open that door, I go to prison for the rest of my life. Yes, I can't survive that. Maybe not, but those 6 kids can survive today. That's the choice you have right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. You can be the man who let 6 children walk out of a church alive, or you can be the man who didn't. There's no third option. The seconds stretched, each one heavier than the last. Cole could hear breathing through the door, ragged, torn, and beneath it, something else. The soft, hitching breaths of children trying not to cry. The kids, Cole's voice dropped. Can you hear them right now? Can you hear how quiet they are? They're doing that thing kids do when they've been taught that sound gets them hurt. They're making themselves invisible. They're disappearing right in front of you. And you know why they know how to do that? You taught them. The door opened, not all the way, an inch, 2 inches, and then a small hand appeared in the gap, a child's hand. Reaching out, Cole took it, gently, small fingers wrapped around his, and a boy stepped through the gap, maybe 7, tear-streaked face, shaking. He looked up at Cole and said nothing, just walked past him toward the line of brothers standing 50 yards back. Griff crouched down and opened his arms, and the boy walked into them like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to do that. Then another child, a girl. Then 2 more, then a 5th. Small bodies slipping through the gap in the door one at a time. Each one silent, each one shaking, each one walking toward the men in leather vests, like they were walking toward the first safe place they'd ever seen. The 6th child was the smallest, a girl. Couldn't have been older than 5. She came through the door last, stood on the church steps, and looked up at Cole with enormous brown eyes. Miss Carroll said safe doesn't exist, she said. But you're here, so maybe she was wrong. Cole knelt down. Safe exists. I'm going to show you. The girl took his hand, held it tight, and walked with him away from the church. Behind them, Pastor Gerald Owens set the shotgun on the floor. He walked out with his hands up. He was crying. Not the crying of a man who was sorry, the crying of a man who had just realized that the story he'd told himself for 15 years, that he was helping children, that he was doing good, that God approved of what he'd built, was a lie. And the truth was standing all around him in the form of 6 children who flinched at his shadow. By noon, all 14 locations had been hit. The numbers came in one by one, each report landing like a hammer blow. 127 children recovered, ages 3 to 15, malnourished, abused. Some hadn't been outside in months. Some didn't know their own last names. Some had been in the network so long they didn't remember anything before it. 14 operators arrested, handcuffed, led to waiting vehicles. Some went quietly. Some screamed about rights and lawyers and knowing important people. One woman in Wyoming, a foster mother named Linda Graves, who had held 9 children in her home, tried to destroy files by burning them in her backyard. Griff's team caught her standing over a trash can fire at 7:15 a.m. They saved most of the documents, singed but readable. And then the number that made Cole sit down on the ground and put his head in his hands. 4 children confirmed dead. Bodies found buried behind 2 different properties, 2 in Montana, 2 in Oregon. The oldest was 9. The youngest was 3. Torres called Cole at 12:47 p.m. Her voice was different now, harder, sharper, like a blade being drawn. We've processed Catherine's flash drive. Everything she said checks out. Wire transfers from 3 shell companies traced back to Harmon's personal financial network. Screenshots of encrypted messages between Harmon and Warren discussing specific children by first name and dollar amount. And photographs. Cole, there are photographs of Harmon sitting at Warren's kitchen table with folders spread out in front of him. Children's faces in those folders. When do we move on him? Already in motion. I sent the evidence package to the Deputy Attorney General an hour ago. Bypassed the AG entirely because Catherine's records show his office received campaign money from Harmon's PAC. We're going straight to the top and around every compromise layer. And Harmon? He's at his home in Virginia. He doesn't know yet, but he will soon because 2 of the operators we arrested this morning have already asked for deals. They want to talk. They want to give up everything they know in exchange for reduced sentences. And both of them named Harmon in their first 5 minutes. How long before he runs? He won't run. Men like Harmon don't run. They fight. They hire the most expensive lawyers in Washington. They call in every favor. They go on television and call it a witch hunt. And they destroy anyone who stands in their way. Torres paused. Which is why I'm sending this to international media in 1 hour. BBC, Reuters, Der Spiegel. Once the world knows, Harmon can't make it disappear. He can't bury it with a phone call. The story becomes bigger than any one person's power to kill. Do it. I need you to understand something, Cole. When this goes public, your name will be out there. The club's name. Every brother who rode last night. Harmon's people will come after all of you. Character assassination, legal threats, maybe worse. We didn't ride 200 miles in the middle of the night because we were worried about our reputations. Torres was quiet for a moment. Then she said something Cole didn't expect. My daughter is in foster care. What? She was, when she was small, before I adopted her. She was in a group home in Nevada for 18 months. She doesn't talk about it. She's 22 now, and she still doesn't talk about it. And some nights, she still sleeps with the light on. Torres's voice tightened. That's why I do this job. That's why I've spent 2 years trying to get to Warren. And that's why I'm going to put Richard Harmon in a cell so deep he'll forget what sunlight looks like. At 2 p.m., Torres released the evidence to the media. By 4 p.m., the story had detonated across every major news outlet on the planet. Congressman Richard Harmon's face was on every screen in every airport, every living room, every phone. The words underneath his photograph hit like a freight train. U.S. Congressman implicated in multi-state child trafficking network. By evening, federal agents surrounded Harmon's Virginia estate. His lawyers filed emergency motions. His office released a statement calling the allegations baseless and politically motivated. His chief of staff held a press conference and called Catherine Warren a mentally unstable woman seeking attention. But the evidence was too deep, too wide, too documented. Catherine had spent 3 years building a bomb, and Torres had just lit the fuse. Harmon's first mistake was going on television. He sat across from a news anchor with his hands folded and his jaw set, and delivered a performance that might have worked 10 years ago. He was calm. He was outraged. He was a public servant being targeted by criminals. A biker gang, he called them. A violent criminal organization that had terrorized a licensed foster care provider and coerced his fragile wife into fabricating evidence. It lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of narrative control. 6 hours during which Harmon's version of events spread through cable news and social media and water cooler conversations across America. And then Caleb spoke. Torres arranged the interview with a single journalist she trusted. Caleb sat in a chair that was too big for him, wearing a shirt that was too new for him, and looked into a camera with eyes that were too old for him. That man, Caleb said, pointing at Harmon's photograph on the screen behind him, came to our house. He asked my friend Lucas if anyone would miss him. Lucas said, no. Caleb paused, swallowed, and the man smiled. The interview aired at 9 p.m. Eastern. By 9:47, Harmon's chief of staff resigned. By 10:15, 3 congressional allies issued statements distancing themselves. By midnight, Harmon's lawyer called Torres and said his client was willing to discuss terms. No terms, Torres said. Surrender, 6 a.m. tomorrow, or I send the marshals. Harmon surrendered at 5:58 a.m., 2 minutes early. He walked out of his front door in a suit and tie, hands at his sides, surrounded by lawyers. The cameras caught his face, not defiant, not broken, empty. The face of a man who had spent decades building a fortress of power and influence and was watching it crumble in real time because a 6-year-old girl got hungry enough to steal a bag of beef jerky. Cole watched the arrest on a television in the Pine Hollow fire station. Emma was beside him. She'd been watching the news coverage all day with the quiet focus of a child who understood, on some level deeper than words, that the world was shifting around her. When Harmon's face appeared on the screen in handcuffs, Emma didn't cheer, didn't smile. She leaned closer, studied his face, and said something that silenced every person in the room. "That's him. He came to our house. He stood next to my bed." Her voice was steady, almost clinical. "He looked at me and told Mr. Warren I was perfect." She turned away from the television and looked at Cole. "He doesn't look scary on TV, but he was. He was the scariest one, because all the others yelled and hit and you could see it coming. But he just smiled and talked quiet and chose kids like he was picking apples off a tree." Cole put his arm around her. She leaned into him, still holding the St. Michael medal in her left hand, still holding on. "Is it over?" she asked. "Not yet," Cole said, "but it's ending." "How do you know?" "Because the people who protected him are running, and the people who were afraid of him are talking, and the whole world is watching now. And once the whole world watches, the dark doesn't work anymore." Emma thought about this. "The dark only works when nobody's looking." "That's right. Then we have to keep looking, forever, so the dark never works again." Cole pulled her closer. "That's exactly what we're going to do." And 400 miles away, in a hospital room in Colorado, a 4-year-old boy named Ben sat up in bed for the first time in 3 weeks, pointed at the light on the ceiling, and said to his nurse, "That one stays on. All the lights stay on. Can you promise?" The nurse took his hand. "I promise." Ben studied her face the way he'd learned to study every adult face, searching for the lie, waiting for the punishment, bracing for the dark. "Emma's friend promised too," he said. "The man on the motorcycle, and he came back." "Then I'll come back too," the nurse said. Ben held her hand with both of his, tiny fingers wrapped around hers, holding on. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll try believing you." The trial began on a Monday in January, 3 months after Cole found Emma behind the ice machine. The courthouse was surrounded by federal marshals, news trucks from 14 countries, and a line of motorcycles that stretched 2 blocks deep. 47 Hells Angels had ridden through the night to be there. Not inside. They weren't allowed inside. But they stood on the courthouse steps in the January cold, arms folded, leather vests visible to every camera in America, making sure the world understood that the people who found these children were not going away. Harmon's defense team arrived in 3 black SUVs, 6 lawyers from the most expensive firm in Washington. They walked through the courthouse doors like men entering a war room, which is exactly what it was. Their strategy had leaked within hours. Attack the evidence, attack the witnesses, attack the Hells Angels, and above all, attack the children. Call them confused, call them coached, call them unreliable. Turn every traumatized child into a question mark and hope the jury couldn't tell the difference between doubt and truth. The lead attorney was a man named Philip Cross, 61 years old, silver hair, $3,000 suits. He had defended 2 former governors, a Fortune 500 CEO accused of fraud, and a 4-star general who had sold classified documents. He had never lost a case that went to jury. His reputation was built on one principle: everybody has a crack, and if you hit it hard enough, the whole thing falls apart. Torres sat at the prosecution table with her team. She'd spent 3 months building the case. 412 charges across 6 states, 17 charges against Harmon alone. She had Catherine Warren's flash drive decoded and verified. She had financial records tracing shell company payments directly to Harmon's personal accounts. She had phone records, encrypted messages, photographs. She had the testimony of 14 arrested operators, 9 of whom had agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. And she had the children. Catherine Warren took the stand first. She wore a gray dress, no jewelry, no makeup. She looked like a woman who had stopped trying to be anything other than what she was. A witness to horror who had kept silent for 3 years and was now ready to speak. Mrs. Warren, Torres began, can you describe the first time you became aware that children in your home were being sold? Catherine's hands were folded in her lap. They didn't shake. She'd practiced this. She'd rehearsed it in her head 1,000 times over 3 years, waiting for the day someone would finally ask. It was April, 3 years ago. Donald received a phone call late at night. I heard him say a child's name, Marcus, and then a number, 38,000. I thought I'd misheard. I told myself I'd misheard. But the next morning, Marcus was gone. His bed was stripped, his shoes were missing. And Donald told the other children that Marcus had been moved to a wonderful new family in California. Did you believe him? For one day. Then I found the envelope in his desk drawer. Cash, $38,000 in $100 bills, wrapped in a rubber band, next to a photograph of Marcus with a sticky note that said, delivered, client satisfied. The courtroom was silent. Not the comfortable silence of people listening, the airless silence of people forgetting to breathe. What did you do? Nothing. Catherine's voice cracked on the word. I did nothing. I told myself there had to be an explanation. I told myself Donald was a good man. I told myself the system worked and someone was watching, and if something were really wrong, somebody would stop it. When did you stop telling yourself those things? When the second child disappeared, a girl named Priya, she was 7. She used to draw butterflies on napkins and leave them on my pillow. She disappeared on a Tuesday in June, and that night I found another envelope, $42,000, and a note in Donald's handwriting that said, buyer requests younger next time. Catherine looked at the jury. Younger, next time, like ordering from a catalog. Her voice broke. That's when I started keeping records, because I knew nobody was coming to stop it. I knew the system that was supposed to protect these children was the system that was feeding them into the machine. And I thought if I kept enough records, if I documented enough evidence, that someday someone would walk through my door who actually cared. And did someone walk through your door? Catherine's eyes moved to where Cole was sitting in the gallery. 3rd row, leather vest, arms crossed. He didn't walk through the door, he kicked it down. Philip Cross stood for cross-examination. He buttoned his jacket, took his time. The way a man takes his time when he wants the room to feel his control. Mrs. Warren, you lived in that house for 3 years while children were allegedly being sold. Is that correct? It's not alleged, it happened. You ate meals in that house, slept in a comfortable bed, drew a salary as a licensed foster care provider, correct? Yes. You had access to a telephone, a computer, a car. At any point in 3 years, did you call the police? I explained why I didn't. A simple yes or no, Mrs. Warren. Did you call the police? No. Did you call Child Protective Services? No. Did you call the FBI? No. Did you walk across the street and tell a single neighbor what was happening in your home? Catherine's composure cracked. You don't understand. The police chief's brother-in-law was one of the buyers, the county sheriff. So your testimony is that every single person in authority in Pine Hollow, Montana was corrupt. Every police officer, every judge, every social worker, all of them. Is that what you're asking this jury to believe? Not all of them, but enough of them. Enough that I knew. What you knew, Mrs. Warren, is that you benefited from the system you now claim to expose. You lived comfortably. You kept silent. and you only came forward when armed men broke into your home in the middle of the night and you had no other choice. Catherine stared at him, tears rolling, jaw tight. Children were disappearing from my house. I was afraid. I was complicit. And I was building the evidence that's going to put your client in prison for the rest of his life. She leaned forward. Ask me if I'm ashamed. The answer is yes, every single day. But shame doesn't make the evidence less real, and it doesn't make those children less gone. Cross sat down. He didn't look at the jury. He didn't need to. He'd planted what he wanted. Doubt about Catherine's motives. Doubt about her timing. Doubt about whether a woman who stayed silent for 3 years could be trusted now that she'd found her voice. But Torres had anticipated this. Every move, every angle. And her next witness wasn't a compromised adult with a complicated story. Her next witness was 10 years old and had nothing to lose because everything had already been taken from him. Caleb walked into the courtroom wearing khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt, 2 sizes too big. His foster mother had bought it for him that morning. He'd never worn a button-down shirt. He kept pulling at the collar like it was trying to choke him. He sat in the witness chair and looked at the courtroom, looked at the judge, looked at the lawyers, looked at Harmon, sitting 15 feet away in a navy suit with his hands folded and his face arranged into an expression of calm, concerned innocence. Caleb stared at Harmon for a long time. Then he turned to Torres. That's him, Caleb said, before Torres even asked a question. That's the man who came to our house. Caleb, can you tell the court what happened when this man visited? He came twice that I saw, maybe more times when we were locked upstairs. Mister, women would make us go to our rooms and be quiet when important people came. But sometimes I watched through the crack in the door. What did you see? The man sat at the kitchen table with Mr. Warren. They had folders. Each folder had a kid's picture on the front. They'd go through the folders one by one. The man would point at a picture and ask questions. How old? How healthy? How quiet? How quiet? He wanted quiet ones. Kids who don't make trouble. Kids who don't talk to strangers. Kids who've learned to stay invisible. Caleb's voice was steady, but his hands gripped the armrests of the witness chair so hard his knuckles turned white. He said quiet kids are worth more because they don't cause problems for the families. The families who purchase them? Objection, Cross said, leading. Sustained, Torres rephrased. Caleb, what happened to the children this man selected? They disappeared, usually within a week. One morning their bed would be empty. Women would say they went to a better home. But we knew. We all knew. How did you know? Because Lucas told me, Caleb's voice caught, the first crack. Lucas was my best friend. He was 8. The man pointed at Lucas's picture and asked Mr. Warren something I couldn't hear. And that night, Lucas came to my mattress and said he was scared. He said he heard Mr. Warren on the phone saying Lucas was worth $45,000. What happened to Lucas? They took him. 3 a.m. I heard the front door open. I heard Lucas crying. He was saying my name. Caleb stopped, swallowed. His eyes filled, but he didn't blink. He refused to blink. He was saying, Caleb, help me. Caleb, please. And I put my pillow over my head, and I didn't move. The courtroom was destroyed. 2 jurors were crying. The judge had removed her glasses and was pressing her fingers against her eyes. A court reporter's hands had stopped moving on her machine. Caleb, is there anything else you want to tell the court? Caleb looked at Harmon again, directly. The way a child looks at a thunderstorm, terrified but refusing to look away. Lucas asked the man a question. When the man came the second time, Lucas walked right up to him because Lucas was brave. He was the bravest kid in that house. And Lucas said, "Are you going to take me away?" And the man looked down at him and said, "Would anyone miss you?" And Lucas said, "No." And the man smiled. Caleb's voice dropped. He smiled, like that was the right answer. Like a kid saying nobody would miss him was exactly what he wanted to hear. Cross stood for cross-examination. The courtroom waited. Every eye watched him approach the witness stand, and every eye held the same unspoken question. Are you really going to do this? Are you really going to cross-examine a 10-year-old boy who just described watching his best friend get sold? Cross did it anyway, because that's what $3,000 an hour buys. Caleb, you mentioned you watched through a crack in the door, is that correct? Yes. A crack, so your view was limited? I could see the kitchen table. Could you clearly see faces from that distance, through a crack in a door, in a dimly lit hallway? I could see his face. Caleb pointed at Harmon. I will never forget his face. Children who experience trauma sometimes have difficulty distinguishing between, I know what I saw. Caleb's voice hardened. 10 years old and made of iron. I know what I heard. I know my friend is gone, and that man sitting right there is the reason why. No further questions. Cross sat down faster than he'd planned, because he'd looked at the jury and seen 12 faces that were no longer neutral. 12 faces that had stopped weighing evidence and started feeling it. But Harmon's team had one more play, one more weapon, and they used it on the person they thought was the weakest link. Sophie, 9 years old, the girl who hadn't spoken in 7 months, the girl who had communicated entirely through drawings since the day she arrived at Warren's home and witnessed something so terrible her voice simply stopped working, like a circuit breaker tripping to protect the system. The defense argued that Sophie's testimony should be excluded. She was nonverbal at the time of the events. She couldn't be cross-examined in the traditional sense. Her drawings were subjective, open to interpretation, inadmissible as direct evidence. The judge allowed her to testify, not verbally, through her drawings, in real time, in front of the jury, with a forensic child psychologist to interpret. Sophie sat at a small table that had been set up next to the witness stand. Paper, crayons. She picked up a black crayon and started drawing. The first drawing showed a kitchen, a table, 2 men sitting across from each other. One was clearly Warren. Sophie had drawn him before, in the same way, with the same features. The other man was in a suit. She drew his face carefully, precisely. Then she held up the drawing and pointed at Harmon. The second drawing showed the same suited man standing in a hallway. In front of him, a row of children. He was pointing at one. The child he pointed at was smaller than the others, had yellow hair. Torres held up the drawing. Sophie, who is the child with yellow hair? Sophie picked up a crayon and wrote one word at the bottom of the drawing in careful, shaking letters. Emma. The third drawing was different. Sophie drew it slowly, deliberately. A man behind bars. Outside the bars, a line of children, holding hands, smiling, sun above them. Every child had a name written underneath. Emma, Ben, Caleb, Lucas, Sarah, Priya, Marcus, and more. Names that hadn't been spoken in this courtroom. Names that Torres hadn't mentioned. Names of children Sophie had known, had lived with, had watched disappear one by one into the machine. When Sophie finished, she didn't hold the drawing up. She stood, walked across the courtroom floor. Every person in the room watched this 9-year-old girl in a white dress walk past the prosecution table, past the gallery, past the judge. She stopped directly in front of Harmon, looked up at him, and placed the drawing on the defense table. The man behind bars, the children holding hands, the sun. Then she walked back to her seat and sat down and folded her hands and waited. Philip Cross did not cross-examine. And then it was Emma's turn. She testified via closed-circuit video from a room down the hall. Torres had fought for this. No child should have to sit in the same room as the man who had cataloged her for sale. The judge agreed. Emma appeared on the screen wearing a yellow dress. Her hair was clean, brushed. She'd gained 4 pounds since Cole found her. She looked like a different child, but her eyes were the same. Those ancient blue eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little, and were now looking into a camera knowing that the most powerful people in the country were watching. "Emma," Torres said gently, "can you tell the court about the man who visited Mr. Warren's house? He came twice that I saw. He wore a nice suit. He walked through the rooms where we slept. He stopped at each bed and looked at us." "Did he stop at your bed?" "Yes, he asked Mr. Warren how old I was. Mr. Warren said 6. And the man said—" Emma stopped. Her lip trembled. 1 second. 2. She steadied herself. "He said, 'Perfect.' What did you understand that to mean?" "I didn't understand it then. I understand it now." Emma's voice was quiet but clear. "He was shopping. We were the store. And he picked me." Torres showed her Harmon's photograph on the screen. "That's him," Emma whispered. "That's the man who said 'perfect.'" Cross had to cross-examine. His client's freedom depended on it. He approached the camera feed with what he probably thought was gentleness, but what the jury saw as a shark circling a lifeboat. "Emma, some people might have told you what to say today. A lawyer, maybe. Or the man who found you. Cole. Did Cole tell you what to say?" "Cole told me to tell the truth." "And what truth is that?" "That I was hungry, that Ben almost died, that my friend Lucas was taken away and nobody told us where." Emma's voice grew stronger. Not louder, stronger. The way a river gets stronger when it finds its channel. "And that man sat in our kitchen and chose which kids to sell, like we were things." She looked directly into the camera. "We're not things. We're kids. And somebody should have listened a long time ago." Cross stared at the screen, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No further questions. He sat down, and every person in that courtroom knew it was over. Not because the evidence was overwhelming, though it was. Not because the testimony was devastating, though it was. But because a 6-year-old girl had just looked into a camera and said what every adult in the system had been too afraid, too corrupt, or too comfortable to say for years. "We're not things, we're kids." The jury went out at 2:17 p.m. Torres sat at the prosecution table with her hands flat on the surface, staring straight ahead, running every piece of evidence through her mind one more time. Cole sat in the gallery with Preacher on his left and Griff on his right. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The courtroom emptied and refilled and emptied again as hours passed. At 6:22 p.m., the jury came back. 4 hours, 12 people, 17 charges. The 4 persons stood. A woman in her 60s, glasses, hands steady. On count 1, trafficking of a minor, how does the jury find? Guilty. On count 2, guilty. On count 3, guilty. 17 times the question was asked. 17 times the answer was the same. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Each word landing like a nail being driven into a coffin. Harmon sat motionless through the first 5 counts. By the 8th, his hands were shaking. By the 12th, the color had drained from his face entirely. By the 17th, he looked like a man watching his own funeral from inside the casket. Congressman Richard Harmon, 4 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. Judge Walter Reed, 35 years. David Kimball, the state supervisor who certified the homes as safe, 22 years. Donald Warren, life without parole. The 14 foster home operators received sentences ranging from 15 to 40 years. 412 arrests across 6 states. Over 300 children recovered. The largest child trafficking prosecution in American history. Cole walked out of the courthouse into the January cold. The brothers were still there. 47 men who had stood on those steps all day. They didn't cheer, didn't shout. They just nodded, one by one, the way men acknowledge something too heavy for words. Preacher was waiting by his bike. It's done? 17 for 17, all guilty. Preacher closed his eyes, exhaled. His breath made clouds in the cold air. Ella would have been 22 this year, he said quietly. She'd have graduated college, maybe had a daughter of her own. He opened his eyes. She didn't get that, but Emma will, and Ben will, and those 300 kids out there will have a shot at something Ella never got. What's that? Tomorrow. Preacher put his hand on Cole's shoulder. Ella never got a tomorrow. Those kids do. Because of what happened on a frozen night at a gas station on Route 9. Cole's phone buzzed. A text from Emma's temporary foster mother. A photograph. Emma sitting at a kitchen table, eating a peanut butter sandwich. Both hands, big bite, crumbs on her chin. And on her face, a smile. Not a careful smile, not a testing smile. A real one. The kind that reaches the eyes and settles in and doesn't plan on leaving. Below the photo, 3 words from Emma. He kept his promise. Cole stared at the screen until his vision blurred. Then he put his phone away, threw a leg over his bike, and kicked the engine to life. The rumble filled the street, and 47 engines answered behind him. And they rode out of that courthouse parking lot into the falling dark, carrying the weight of what they'd done and the knowledge of what still remained. Because the verdict was in, but the children were still healing, still waking up in the night, still flinching at shadows, still learning the hardest lesson any of them would ever face. That safe could be real, that promises could hold, that the dark didn't always win. Ben survived. That was the first miracle. His kidneys recovered slowly, painfully, the way a body rebuilds itself when it's been pushed to the edge of dying and dragged back by hands that refuse to let go. 2 months in the hospital, 3 more in rehabilitation. Nurses who learned to leave every light on in his room because the first time someone turned one off, Ben screamed so loud the entire pediatric wing heard it. A scream that didn't sound like a child. It sounded like something crawling out of a concrete box in the dark. Russ Navarro visited every Tuesday, drove 4 hours each way, sat beside Ben's bed, and read picture books out loud, even when Ben couldn't focus, even when Ben stared at the wall, even when Ben flinched every time Russ shifted in his chair. Russ kept coming, every Tuesday, without fail, because he'd made a promise in a basement to a dying boy, and Russ Navarro didn't break promises. Ben's first full sentence came on a Tuesday in March. His foster mother, a retired school teacher named Donna, who had fostered 11 children over 20 years and had never once raised her voice, was tucking him in. She reached for the bedside lamp. "No," Ben said. Donna pulled her hand back. "Dark hurts," Ben said. "I'll leave it on, baby. Every light, all night. Promise?" "Promise." Ben looked at her, searching her face the way he searched every adult face, hunting for the lie, bracing for the betrayal. Then something shifted, something small, a crack in the armor that a 4-year-old should never have had to build. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not being the dark." Donna made it to the hallway before she broke down. She called Cole at 11 o'clock that night, crying so hard she could barely get the words out. Cole listened, didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it, just listened. Because some things don't need fixing, they just need a witness. He hung up and sat alone in his kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing, holding his phone in hands that had kicked down a door and carried a boy out of a basement, and were now shaking because a 4-year-old had said, "Thank you for not being the dark." Torres called on a Saturday morning in April. Cole was in the backyard with Emma, teaching her to throw a baseball. She was terrible. She threw like someone who'd never used her arms for anything except covering her face. The ball went sideways, backward, once straight into the ground 2 feet in front of her. But she was laughing, a sound Cole hadn't heard from her until 3 weeks after he'd found her. A sound so unexpected the first time it happened that he'd turned around to see where it was coming from. Now she laughed every day, and every day it rebuilt something inside him that he'd thought was gone forever. All 43, Torres said, every single one, recovered alive. Cole sat down on the grass, hard, like his legs just quit. Emma ran over. What's wrong? Are you sad? No, sweetheart, I'm the opposite of sad. What's the opposite of sad? Cole pulled her into a hug, held her tight, felt her heartbeat against his chest, fast and strong and alive. This, he said, this is the opposite of sad. That's not a word. It is now. Emma pulled back and looked at him, those blue eyes, still ancient, still carrying everything she'd survived. But something new lived there now, something that hadn't been there the night he found her choking on beef jerky behind an ice machine. Trust, fragile and imperfect and tested daily, but real. Was that the FBI lady? Yeah. Did they find all the kids? Every one. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, even Lucas? Even Lucas. Her lip trembled. She bit it, held it, controlled it, the way she'd learned to control every emotion in a house where showing feeling meant punishment. Caleb's going to be so happy, she said. Lucas was his best friend. He never stopped talking about Lucas. Even when the other kids told him to stop because it made them sad, Caleb kept saying Lucas's name. He said if he stopped saying it, Lucas would disappear for real. Caleb was right. I know. Emma picked up the baseball and threw it. It went sideways again. She didn't care. Can we call Caleb and tell him? Yeah, we can call Caleb. Caleb answered on the first ring. He always answered on the first ring when Cole's number came up, because Caleb had learned that when Cole called, it meant something real. Not a broken promise, not a lie dressed up in adult language, something real. They found Lucas, Cole said. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Caleb, you there? A sound came through the phone. Not a word. Something deeper. The sound of a 10-year-old boy who had spent 6 months believing his best friend was gone forever, hearing that he wasn't. The sound of grief releasing its grip. Where is he? Caleb's voice was wrecked, shattered, beautiful. Idaho. He's in a hospital. He's okay. He's asking about you. He's asking about me? First thing he said when Torres found him, where's Caleb? The crying on the other end was loud now, uncontrolled. The kind of crying Caleb hadn't allowed himself since the night Lucas was taken, because crying in Warren's house meant the basement, and crying after Warren's house meant admitting that the worst thing that ever happened to you was real. Can I see him? Torres is arranging it, this week. This week. Caleb repeated it like a prayer. Tell Lucas I didn't forget. Tell him I said his name every day. Tell him I'm sorry I hid under my mattress. Tell him... You can tell him yourself, Caleb, this week, face to face. They met on a Wednesday. Torres arranged it at a family services center in Boise. Cole drove Caleb. Russ drove Lucas. The two boys saw each other across a waiting room and froze. Two kids who had shared mattresses on a floor, who had whispered in the dark, who had been each other's only family in a house where family was a weapon, standing 20 feet apart, afraid to move, afraid that if they blinked, the other one would disappear again. Lucas moved first. He walked. Then he ran. Caleb caught him. Two boys holding each other in the middle of a government waiting room, crying so hard the receptionist had to leave the desk because she couldn't see through her own tears. You're real, Lucas said. You're real, you're real, you're real. I said your name every day, Caleb said. Every single day. I heard you. Lucas pulled back, looked at Caleb with eyes that had seen things no 8-year-old should survive. I don't know how, but I heard you. Sophie spoke for the first time 20 minutes after the verdict. Not in the courtroom, outside, on the courthouse steps, where Emma was waiting with Cole. Sophie walked up to Emma, took her hand and said 3 words, the first words she'd spoken in 7 months. "We are safe." She said them once, then again, then a third time, testing whether the world would punish her for making sound. It didn't, so she kept talking, slowly, carefully, one word at a time, rebuilding a voice that had been taken from her. "Emma told me about the medal," Sophie said, her voice rough, unused, like a door being opened for the first time in years. "She said a man gave it to her and promised to come back. And he did." "He did," Emma confirmed. "People don't come back," Sophie said. "That's what I learned. People leave and they don't come back." "He came back," Emma said. Sophie looked at Cole, studied him, the same way every child from that house studied every adult, reading the face, searching for the lie, calculating the distance to the nearest exit. "He's real," Sophie said quietly. "Told you," Emma said. The adoption was finalized on the first day of April. Cole had never planned on becoming a father again. After Nora died, 9 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, killed by a drunk driver who walked away with a suspended license and a fine that cost less than Cole's motorcycle, he had sealed that part of himself shut, welded it closed, poured concrete over it, built a life around the edges of a hole that he refused to let anyone near. But Emma hadn't asked permission. She hadn't knocked on the door he'd locked. She'd found a crack he didn't know existed and slipped through it the way she'd slipped behind that ice machine. Silently, desperately, and with no intention of going back. The judge looked at Emma. "Do you understand what adoption means?" Emma squeezed Cole's hand, tight, the way she'd squeezed the St. Michael medal that first night. "It means I get to stay." 4 words. The courtroom went silent. The judge removed her glasses. The court reporter stopped typing. Cole's attorney pressed his hand over his mouth and looked at the ceiling. "Yes," the judge said. Her voice was thick. "That's exactly what it means." Outside the courthouse, Preacher was waiting. 47 brothers, full leather, bikes polished and gleaming in the April sun. They'd ridden through the night, again, because that's what they did. "Welcome home, little wolf," Preacher said, crouching to Emma's level. "I'm not little." "No, you're not. My mistake." Emma smiled, a real smile, the kind that starts in the belly and rises through the chest and reaches the eyes and stays there, like it's found the place it's been looking for. Sophie was adopted 3 weeks later by Russ Navarro and his wife Carmen. She lived 20 minutes from Emma. They saw each other every weekend. Sophie called Emma her sister. Emma called Sophie her best friend. They were both right. Caleb was placed with Preacher's son and daughter-in-law. He resisted at first, refused to unpack his bag for 3 weeks, slept with his shoes on, kept a granola bar hidden under his pillow in case the food stopped coming. But one morning in May, his foster mother found his shoes in the closet, lined up neatly, side by side, and his bag, unpacked, folded, and stored on the top shelf. She called Preacher. "He unpacked." "I know," Preacher said. "He told me yesterday he was thinking about it. I told him unpacking doesn't mean he can't leave if he needs to. He said that's what made him want to stay." The Hells Angels launched Angel Watch on the 1-year anniversary. Every chapter in the country partnered with local foster care agencies. Unannounced visits, check-ins, safe reporting channels for children who needed to tell someone something but were too afraid to say it out loud. Emma was Cole's unofficial advisor. She attended every planning meeting, sat in a chair with her legs dangling, eating a granola bar, listening to grown men twice her size discuss logistics and protocols. "You need a box," she told Cole one evening. "A box?" "A locked box at every foster home where kids can put notes, secret notes, things they're too scared to say, and only your people open it, not the foster parents, not the caseworkers, just you." "Why just us?" "Because caseworkers smiled at our bruises. Foster parents locked us in basements. You kicked down the door." Emma looked at him with those ancient blue eyes that were, slowly, day by day, becoming the eyes of a child again. Kids don't need more adults with clipboards. They need adults who show up. They installed the boxes. Within the first month, 47 notes. 11 led to investigations. 3 led to children being removed from dangerous homes before the danger became permanent. One note, written in crayon by a 5-year-old boy, said, "He hurts us when the door is closed. Please come." They came. Within the hour, the boy was safe by nightfall. On the anniversary, 143 motorcycles rode through Pine Hollow, past Hudson's gas station, past the house on Route 9 that had been demolished and replaced with a community garden that the local elementary school maintained, past the courthouse where a congressman, a judge, and a machine that had swallowed children whole had been brought down by a bag of stolen beef jerky and a man who listened. Emma rode on the back of Cole's bike, arms wrapped tight around his waist, helmet slightly too big, bobbing with every bump. She was 7 now, 52 pounds, healthy, growing, laughing at things that weren't funny because laughing felt good, and she was still catching up on years of it she'd missed. They stopped at the garden. A bronze plaque had been installed in the center. Below 4 names, the children who hadn't survived the network, a single line of text. Cole read it to Emma because she was still learning to read. "In memory of the children who suffered in silence, and in honor of those who finally listened." Emma stared at the plaque for a long time. What does silence mean? It means nobody was talking. But they were. Emma looked up at him. The kids were talking. They were always talking, with bruises, with hunger, with the way they flinched when adults moved too fast. She shook her head. It wasn't silence. It was nobody listening. Cole looked at his daughter. 7 years old, blonde hair catching the late afternoon sun, wearing a yellow jacket, the St. Michael medal around her neck, her own, bought the day after he'd given her Nora's, and she'd asked if she could have one that was hers. "You're right," he said, "but that's over now." "Promise?" "Promise." They rode home as the sun went down. 143 engines, filling the Montana air with a sound that was part thunder, part heartbeat, part promise. Men who had decided that protecting children wasn't a weekend project or a seasonal commitment or a line on a resume. It was who they were. It was who they would always be. And it had started with 5 words from a 6-year-old girl standing barefoot on frozen asphalt, starving, terrified, gripping a stolen bag of beef jerky with both hands, looking up at a stranger with eyes that had already given up on rescue. "No police, please. I'll be good." 5 words that exposed a trafficking empire spanning 6 states. 5 words that toppled a congressman, a judge, and a network that had made children disappear for years. 5 words that prove what the world keeps forgetting and what those children will spend the rest of their lives teaching everyone willing to listen. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the loudest truth. Sometimes the people society calls outlaws are the only ones willing to protect the innocent. And sometimes family isn't blood or paperwork or a judge's signature. Family is the person who crouches down, makes themselves small, and says, "Nobody's calling anyone. You hungry?" Emma had that family now, all 143 of them. Sophie had it, Ben had it, Caleb had it, Lucas had it, and 43 children who had been lost in the dark had it too. Because one girl stole beef jerky, one man listened, and 143 brothers rode through the night to prove that the world still had people in it worth trusting. Emma Hayden was never invisible again. None of them were. Not anymore. Not ever again.